Here's how I think the first round of the NFL draft is going to pan out for the New Orleans Saints. We got all that and a little bit of land yap for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net and Saints analyst with WWL TV. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we got a little bonus episode for you as we go through my final predictions for what's going to happen for the New Orleans Saints in the first round of tonight's NFL draft. We'll dive into what I think is going to happen in terms of the possible trade up, and we'll also lead everything off with what I think will happen at pick number 9 overall. We appreciate you very much as always, whether it's your first time or your next time, being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My final prediction for the New Orleans Saints at number 9 overall in the first round of tonight's NFL draft is offensive tackle out of Texas, Longhorns tackle Kelvin Banks Jr. That's where I think the New Orleans Saints are going to end up going here. Now, how does that differ from where I would like to see them go? Obviously, I'd love to see them go after the big, shiny, new piece on the offense, like a Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State, like a running back out of Boise State, Ashton, Jeanty, one of these big playmakers that helps your offense go. But I understand the idea that this is a team that wants to build from the inside out and that wants to win because of its trenches. I've seen it with Kellen Moore over and over again. What happened with the Dallas Cowboys, what happened with the Philadelphia Eagles, and how much that success, a pair of 12-5 seasons to wrap up his tenure with the Cowboys, a Super Bowl victory with the Eagles, was all kind of predicated on what each of those teams was able to do on its lines, and in particular, the offensive line, which is where the New Orleans Saints maybe have the biggest talent discrepancy from what the Eagles as well as the Cowboys had to offer in those areas, offensive line and defensive line. Although I think you can make an argument in favor of the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line. No arguments back from me on that, by the way. But I do think that this is the direction that the New Orleans Saints are going to go. The 6'5", 313, 311 pound Kelvin Banks Jr. is the guy that's able to come in and immediately make your offensive line better. He gives you one of the 5 best offensive linemen for your unit, and then you figure out where they all fit. 33.5-inch arms puts him just well enough in terms of reach, great wingspan as well, big hands to be a tackle for you. Maybe you don't want the question mark of Trevor Penning for a second year under this new coaching staff and in this new offensive system, and instead you want the exclamation point, which means you could move Taliese Fuanga over to right tackle and then plug in Kelvin Banks Jr. at his natural position, which he played all throughout his collegiate days over at left tackle. Potentially you plug him in at left guard and then see what the future holds for Trevor Penning. But in any circumstance, Kelvin Banks Jr. immediately makes your offensive line better. I'm going to share something that I heard, or that I read rather, from Dane Brugler's draft guide when it came to Steve Sarkisian, the head coach of the Texas Longhorns, when asked about, Kelvin Banks and stuff like that. He said, quote, "Whenever someone comes and asks, Coach, what do I need to do and how do I need to do it? I say, be like Kelvin." That's who Kelvin Banks is. He appeared in 42 games throughout his collegiate career, started all 42 of them, missed a single game during that time, which was his final matchup in the SEC championship due to a left ankle injury. It was the first game that he missed dating back to his high school days. He's durable. He's versatile. Better run blocker than pass blocker, but has everything that he needs to be able to excel as a pass blocker in the NFL as well. And in particular, being able to work in a multiple rushing game system, a multiple offensive scheme, like what Kellen Moore is set to do. Kelvin Banks Jr. feels like a perfect fit. What stands in the way of the New Orleans Saints making this selection? That would be the Las Vegas Raiders at pick number 6. Right now, the Raiders are favored to select Kelvin Banks Jr. at the number 6 overall selection. But we all know that all offseason long, the Raiders and Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty have been paired. You also see in mock drafts and things like that, you've also seen a lot of love between the Raiders and Armand Membu, the offensive lineman from Missouri. They're dealing right now with a contract dispute with Colton Miller, one of their current starting offensive linemen, that could potentially lead to his shipping away, however it is that you want to look at it, but could eventually lead to his departure from the Raiders, making offensive line a big need. So Kelvin Banks, absolutely a name to watch at number 6. But if he makes it past the Las Vegas Raiders, I feel pretty confident that he should be, or not should be, but could be the guy that the New Orleans Saints, that's the name that's connected to them when the New Orleans Saints march their pick up for the number 9 overall selection. Great hands in pass protection, very talented player altogether. Good athleticism as well, 5.16 speed, over an 8 when it comes to the RAS, if you're somebody that's into that, relative athletic score. So he has the athleticism, he has the speed, he's a good puller as well, good body control, and does a great job even in those open field one-on-one situations where he climbs up the second and third levels to pave the way for runners behind him. He would be somebody that would have an immediate impact on this New Orleans Saints offense, an immediate impact on this New Orleans Saints offensive line, and an immediate impact on this New Orleans Saints offense and this New Orleans Saints team's ability to win games in the very near future. Kelvin Banks, I believe, will be the selection for the New Orleans Saints at pick number 9 if he is still on the board. I still believe that guys like Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State, possibly Boise State running back Ashton, Jeanty, maybe even Michigan defensive tackle Mason Graham. I still believe that those guys might turn the New Orleans Saints away from the offensive line potentially and be very tempting if they are also still on the board. So we'll have to wait and see who else is there. But Kelvin Banks Jr. is feeling like the selection to me. If Kelvin Banks Jr. gets selected by the Las Vegas Raiders, expect the New Orleans Saints to probably pounce on offensive line at number 9. If Will Campbell's off the board, if Armand Membu's off the board, if Kelvin Banks Jr. is off the board, a guy like Josh Connolly coming out of Oregon makes a lot of sense for New Orleans and is one of those players that would go much higher than the consensus big boards, much higher than the mock drafts, but I promise you is very highly ranked across the NFL's draft boards as opposed to what you're seeing in those media big boards. And so I would not be shocked if that would be the alternative. Although if all 3 of those offensive linemen go early, one of those temptations of a skill position player could potentially be there for the New Orleans Saints at 9 that might distract them from building within the trenches. That's my pick for the New Orleans Saints. That's my prediction for the New Orleans Saints at number 9. It's what I think they will do. Coming up next, how do I think the back half of the first round pans out might not really amount to what it is that the New Orleans Saints want as they pursue a trade up for their potential future quarterback. We got that coming up next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by your friends over at Monarch Money. How many times have you checked your bank account and kind of been left to wonder, oh my goodness, where did all of my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, and all of the other expenses that are simply piling up for you, it can become very hard sometimes to meet your budget and to keep track of all of your spending. That's why Monarch Money is for you. It's like having your own personal CFO, your own personal Kai Harley to help you be able to manage all of your money so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth, because it's not just a budgeting tool. It's not just something that keeps track of all your accounts, but it helps you to get into your investments, share as well, easy collaboration if you're sharing accounts, all of that all in one place. You can get rid of the 6 or 7 apps that you're trying to use to manage all of your accounts. And instead, just Monarch Money will get you all taken care of. Take control of your finances today with Monarch Money. Use that promo code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com to get 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Today's episode brought to you by friends over at Gametime, the absolute best place to go to get last minute tickets. No more boring nights at home because there's nothing going on. Thanks to the Gametime app, it's super easy to find out what's going on in your city, or maybe even while you're on the road. The spontaneous last minute event space is a ton of fun. And thanks to Gametime, you get to take advantage of it all, because with their last minute deals, people save up to 60% on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and much more. They also have an all-in pricing option you can toggle on. That way it gets rid of all those surprise fees that pop up on all those other ticketing distributors over at checkout. You see what you pay. I absolutely love Gametime because they take all the guesswork out of buying tickets. You can do the same by downloading the Gametime app, creating an account, and using the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use that promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs know how hard it is sometimes to be a small business owner and also try to hire, right? Your business is only as good as the people that you bring in to help you manage it, help you run it, help you execute your mission. Well, that's why LinkedIn Jobs is here to take some of that work off of your plate. They make it easy for you to post your job and then share it within your network, share it outside of your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. It's no wonder that 72% of small business owners absolutely love LinkedIn Jobs because it helps them find those high quality hires right where you need them, right when you need them, and for free. That's my favorite part of over at LinkedIn Jobs. There's a ton for you to check out there, including their hashtag hiring frames, help spread the word that your job is hiring, and much more. They'll even help you write your job descriptions. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Well, I think the New Orleans Saints would be stoked to land Kelvin Banks Jr. to start off their draft at the number 9 overall selection. I have a feeling that the plan to trade up into the back half of the first round might not necessarily go their way. This is a team that might be looking to trade up into the back half of the first round to grab its starting quarterback, but I wonder how much competition they're going to have. The Cleveland Browns pick at 33. They could potentially be looking to move up to make sure they get their guy after they likely pass on quarterback at number 2 overall. The New York Giants, my apologies, still apparently the conversation around Shedeur Sanders, that door is not closed, but that could just be draft day smoke. And then we see where things go. But they pick at number 34 overall in the second round. And so they also have a better second round selection to offer than the New Orleans Saints at 40, which could lead to a bit of a bidding war that the New Orleans Saints lose out on. And if you're selecting at 40, I do think you have a shot at certain quarterbacks. I don't know if you're going to have a shot at Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart at 40. I don't know if you're going to have a shot at Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe at 40. But if Tyler Shuck out of Louisville is indeed, as we expect, the target for the New Orleans Saints, then it certainly feels like 40 might be a place where he ends up getting to, right? You could still potentially get him there at 40. Now, it depends. Are other teams in love with him? Do other teams feel that he's as pro-ready as some of the media does? All of that. I think Tyler Shuck is a risk. I think Tyler Shuck is a type of quarterback that you saddle your head coach with, and then you might be going right back to the well in a couple of years. I think he has some of the best tape in some cases, but in a lot of cases, he's got some of the worst tape in this class as well, especially under pressure, which is something that doesn't always translate well to the NFL coming from collegiate days for these young passers. So there's a lot of question marks around Tyler Shuck, and the Saints would certainly be a bit surprising if they were to move up to draft him in the back half of the first round. But there's a part of me that feels that they will try and then not be willing to try very hard in terms of what it's going to take for them to get there. One of the things that Mickey Loomis said during his Wednesday press conference is that it's great sometimes to go up there. He didn't say it that way, but I'm paraphrasing. But he talked about how, you want to go and, take swings at the quarterback position in particular. But one of the things that you want to avoid doing is overdrafting at the position. And instead, drafting somebody that you love, not somebody that you really like. He was specifically talking about drafting somebody that you love versus somebody that you really like when he was talking about drafting within the top 10. However, I imagine that leveraging future draft capital, more draft capital, and trying to trade up into the first round, I think that there's a love aspect that has to be there for that as well. So the Saints could potentially try to trade up into the back half of the first round in order to target Tyler Shuck. The other scenario here that no one's really talked about, so maybe it's not actually there, but something I want to acknowledge is that if the Saints are indeed tempted by a skill position player at number 9, the opportunity to trade back into the first round to draft an offensive lineman, a la a couple years ago, 2022, where they took Chris Olave, and then after a trade up that had happened earlier before the draft, they ended up moving up and using that second selection to grab Trevor Penning, the offensive lineman. You could do something similar. Let's say Tyler Warren, let's say Ashton Jeanty are on the board at number 9 that tempts you away from where you want to go with your trenches, building from the inside out, all of those other principles that we've heard Kellen Moore bring up. unsolicited several times over the course of this offseason. And of course, Mickey Loomis bring up, most notably on Wednesday in his pre-draft press conference. If they are tempted away from doing that because of one of the skill position players, I wonder how much the idea of trading up into the back half of the first round could also be about drafting an offensive lineman. So there are other possibilities here, but I think they're going to struggle to trade up into the back half of the first round if they're going after a quarterback. I think the premiums that they're going to be asked to pay are going to be tough. I think the competition will be there in terms of other teams looking to trade up into the back half of the first round. You got teams like the Tennessee Titans, who select 35th overall, that are reportedly looking at trading up into the back half of the first round to go after a wide receiver. And so there's players, teams, stuff like that you're going to be competing with while trying to move up to go and get your guy. And if everybody thinks you're moving up to grab that quarterback, they're going to charge you a premium. And if you get into a bidding war with other teams that have better picks than you, 33, 34, 35, with the Browns, the Giants, and the Titans, respectively, it's going to be even more expensive. It's going to cost you even more to be able to beat them out in order to trade up to get that latter first round pick in order for you to get a quarterback. So those are my predictions for this draft. Kelvin Banks Jr. at pick 9, overall in the first round. If he's not there, then Josh Connolly out of Oregon makes a lot of sense. Trading up into the back half of the first round for quarterbacks probably going to be tougher than a lot of people think that it is. Here's the other thing that I want to acknowledge as a possibility. I promised you a little bit of lagniappe. Here's that lagniappe. There's a lot of conversation about the New Orleans Saints trading back in this year's draft. And that feels like that happens every year, right? And Mickey Loomis says that he doesn't hate the idea of trading back in his pre-draft presser. And all of a sudden, a bunch of reports come out saying, whoa, the Saints are looking at trading back. And I think that it's a little bit of over speculation personally, and then eventually they end up not actually trading back to no one's surprise. Mickey Loomis keeps saying that he is not averse to trading back. It's not that he's against trading back, but he also hasn't traded back since 2007, nearly 2 decades. So I think he's a little bit adverse to trading back, and that's okay. That's okay. I understand the logic behind it, right? Trade up, get the guy you want, stick and pick, take the guy you want, trade back, risk not getting the guy you want. Makes perfect sense. However, this year is interesting. The New Orleans Saints are amongst one of those teams that could miss out on one of the top 5, top 6 best players in this year's draft. And after that, the kind of range of grades between the players that follow and the 40th overall selection midway through day 2, for instance, they're all pretty similar, according to a lot of sources. And so the Saints could potentially be tempted to move back, knowing that they could still get a comparable level of player at, let's say, 20 or 13 or 12 or even 10, if the Chicago Bears are afraid of somebody leaping them, as they could get at 9. So if there is ever a year to trade back, this year kind of does make sense because of that clump of starter material players that range from basically the 6th or 7th best player on the list down to the 50th or 60th best player on the list. It's a good range for New Orleans. So they could trade back, still land an offensive lineman, and then have more assets to use to trade up to go and get that quarterback, which might mitigate a little bit of that concern about the bidding war that could happen with those players, with those teams that are looking to trade up from the top of the second round. So just something to watch out for. Not a prediction, but more so a curiosity around where all this goes. I can't wait to see how wrong I am. We'll be talking all about it later on. I'll be live later after we finish talking to whoever the first round selection is. If there's a second first round selection after we speak to that player, I'll be live again, and we'll have another selection or another episode up for you tomorrow in the early afternoon as well, getting you ready for day 2. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing them, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.